Hello and welcome to All Things Business, the podcast, looking at the businesses and people who bring their expertise and employment to the Northamptonshire, Bedfordshire and Milton Keynes region. It's good to be back. I'm John Griff, and in this third edition of the podcast, the last one of 2020 and the last one before the biggest single change to trade that this country has seen in almost a century, we take a look at a quartet of quality businesses. There's the Northamptonshire business enjoying not double but triple-digit expansion in its client base, and with more to come.
Yeah, so we've been growing rapidly, and so we went from the beginning of the year, we had 3,000 clients, and we're going to finish on 6,000 at the end of 2020. We've just opened an office in Spain, and we've got 2 new starters to join early 2021.
There's the conference, leisure and training complex, giving delegates a unique way to wind down and also gear up.
You've got huge colouring in walls. The guys will come out of their training room and they'll pick up the colouring in pens and they'll stand there for half an hour talking to each other and colouring in.
We call in on SEMLEP for a snapshot of the present and a forecast of the future post-Brexit.
In the last few weeks, sort of pre the sort of latest lockdown, we have started to see job postings and job vacancies sort of recover to pre-lockdown levels, which is a positive thing.
And there's the former World Cup winning sports star who's now bringing his teamworking skills to a new enterprise.
Our facility is going to be completely open, hopefully in March when everything's going on. We've had the first bottles and cans filled last week. I've done quite a considerable bit of tasting, so I'm happy with them.
There's plenty to come before last orders in December's edition of All Things Business, the podcast. So settle in for the next half hour and let's get going. Lots of businesses have names which give no clue as to the work or services that they provide. But with Sign-In app based in a barn in the rolling Northamptonshire countryside, clarity is everything. Dan Harding and Chris Burton are directors, who I spoke to a couple of weeks ago. I asked Chris whether the business of Sign-In app really is as clear as what it seems to say on the tin.
Pretty much, that is exactly what it does. We sign in visitors and staff for predominantly health and safety reasons, to make sure you've got an accurate count of who's on site, to make sure that you can have a roll call or an evacuation and know exactly who's in the premises. But also it's evolved into a staff tool to keep track of hours of when people are signed in from a safety perspective, but also from like a timesheet perspective.
Dan, on the face of it, it's a very simple product. Is it something that is completely standalone? Does it require a lot of training in for clients and their staff, many of whom, of course, have been in the office since March of this year?
It is a simple product to get set up with. We're quite proud that you can be set up using the product for free in 15 minutes and you're using the core features. But you can make it pretty smart. We've got global organisations that are signing into offices all around the world. That's asking health questions, sending notifications based on their answers to alert someone if they have been in contact with someone with COVID, for example. So, one, it can be pretty smart, but we are really proud that it is self-set up, but we've got a really great customer experience team that's online to answer questions if required.
Chris, managing that data, holding on to that data, making sure that data is safe and secure is a really big thing for all kinds of businesses. How is Sign-In app secure in that way? Can you be hacked?
No. It's basically what we spend the vast majority of our time doing is making sure that we've got the right controls in place to protect visitors' data. Because we're not only handling the data for our clients, but also their visitors, and it's personally identifiable data. So many businesses classify that as the most sensitive information that they're going to be collecting. So for us, it's all about having the right infrastructure in place, making sure we make the right investments to have the correct data centres that are all locked down, and then having the know-how and the skills and knowledge in-house to make sure that we look after that data as we should be doing.
Now, you talked about worldwide clients. So where does the data end up? Does the data end up here in the UK from a client who might be in Central Europe or might be out in Australia or something like that? The expansion of your market is going to drive the way in which you manage that data, surely.
So we had a pretty big project this year that we've called Regions, and we identified as our client base grew and was across the globe that we needed to address where data was stored, because it was always a really key selling point for our UK customers. And you mentioned Brexit as well. So quite early on, probably about 2.5 years ago, people were starting to ask us, well, when Brexit happens, where will our data be stored? Regions now allows our customers to choose where they store their data from 4 data centres: UK, US, EU data centre, which is in Stockholm, and then we've got one in Australia as well.
And right now, obviously, there's a fairly big implication concerning data when it comes to test and trace, when it comes to COVID-19. How does your product either assist your clients or perhaps assist test and trace?
The main control that we put in place recently with the test and trace element is controlling how long the data is stored, because one element of test and trace is if you are bringing people onto site, you need to have their contact information to be able to contact them in the event of an outbreak. And one of the controls that's within Sign and App allows them to say how long that data is stored, which I think is 3 weeks for the recommended amount of time. So it just means that you're not storing data for any longer than you need to. And particularly with test and trace, some of the mechanisms that people have put in place early on to record that information was writing into books, it was putting it onto a spreadsheet, it was all the forms of data collection that have no controls. So ultimately, who's got access to that, who's got eyes on it, and if you're talking about the personal information of your guests, you need to make sure that that's locked down to just the people who need to have access.
Chris, one of the things that most attracted me when I was looking at the product itself is that you encourage people to use a piece of technology that is going to be widely available right across the whole of the globe. You can even reuse technology that might have fallen into disuse in the form of iPads. It actually dramatically changes the cost of your product if you don't have to supply the iPad to the client.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing is for the iPad as a standalone product is it's reliable. We've had really good track record with that as a product. Even going into devices that are 6 or 7 years old, they don't have to be the latest and newest technology. It's all self-contained. It's a touch screen. It's got all the intelligence inside it, so you don't need a PC hidden off somewhere that does all the workings. And a massive market for us is education, and obviously for education, we've done a lot in care homes and all sorts of different industries that do have to watch what they're spending, and having an option where they can reuse an existing device that they may have had for another purpose and then present it effectively. All of the iPads have got great screens, so everybody gets the same experience. And probably one of the things that's changed for us most recently is a lot of people are using their own personal devices now to sign in. So we have a contactless option, which means that the iPad can be there, it can have your message, your branding on it, but ultimately the person who's arriving, if they don't want to touch the screen, they can use their own personal device. So they scan a QR code off the screen, a similar process to what people will be used to now with test and trace, and then they'll be presented on their own personal phone all the information that they need to collect. It's just another way of making it really accessible for everybody, whether it's through the iPad, through the touchscreen, or through their own devices. They've got lots of options now.
Dan, the business has been growing at a rate of knots. Just how far has that rate of increase been driving the business and perhaps the expansion of jobs within Sign App?
Yeah, so we've been growing rapidly, and so we went from the beginning of the year, we had 3,000 clients, and we're going to finish on 6,000 at the end of 2020. We've just opened an office in Spain, and we've got 2 new starters to join early 2021. Still got ambitious growth plans, so we'll look at growing by another 2,500 sites next year, and that will mean more jobs, more opportunity for people.
Dan, with a business that size and the scope for the business developing, doesn't that make you a target for the Facebooks, the Googles of this world, or even the Apples of this world, given that you're using that technology to say, do you know what? We're talking about human behaviour. We're talking about something as simple as somebody coming to another place of work and signing in and giving in their details. Doesn't that make you a bit of a target?
Yeah, I think a target, and as you become a larger business, I think you get all sorts of possibilities of things that could happen, but I think you need to concentrate on your own game. We understand the market better than most, if not anybody out there. We listen to our clients, as we've mentioned before, so well. We know what they want. You can't just pick that up. So yes, threats, and we're fully aware of them, but do we get too hooked up on them? No. I think if we carry on doing a good job servicing our clients really well, that we'll be fine. And if any of them do knock on the door or come up with anything, we've got pretty good brains in the business, and we'll react to it and we'll deal with it.
You say that with an enormous grin on your face.
The big brains? I was talking about everyone else and not me.
No, I meant the managing director has just been sitting here with an enormous grin on his face at the prospect of a colossal great cheque from the Mark Zuckerbergs of this world.
You just can't focus on that. Do you know? I think that's a possibility in the future, that something could happen, but you've got no control over it. Our job is to keep all these people employed in Northamptonshire and Spain now, and develop a great product. And like Chris rightly said, we've got huge responsibility for health and safety, and all these people that are using our product day in, day out.
All right, well, the super yachts may not yet be on order, but that will follow in due course. They always say in things like this that you should talk about brand, not price. But what does it cost to get started with signing up?
It's £295 per annum for a 12-month subscription, and that gets you all of our app features and portal features. So there's no hidden costs with that or anything like that. You do require hardware, the iPad, you can use one, but we've got a full package offering that you can see on our website if you're interested.
Why would you not want to be part of an ever-growing family, and a family that's growing at a rate of knots? Sign In App. Chris, Dan, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. Cheers.
That's Dan and Chris from Sign In App. Give them a try at signinApp.com. How's that for clarity? From one business helping its clients to manage the comings and goings of their visitors around the world, to one with literally millions of individual visits made every year. The 350-acre site that is now Wyboston Lakes Resort first saw life in 1983, since when it's grown from being principally a golf course to a complex boasting state-of-the-art facilities in accommodation, conference and training, as well as adventure activities. As Director of Marketing Louisa Watson told me, though, the business continues to be firmly built on the values of the family which first set up the business over 35 years ago.
Yes, it is a family-driven business. We've been on this site for nearly 40 years now as Wyboston Lakes, and it's come from being just a golf course with a golf hut to having two big business venues on site, both of which are residential. It has a lovely 4-star hotel and spa, 18-hole golf course. We've got the team building, the water sports, which I think you've actually been to previously.
I have,
yes.
Yeah.
And we've got a nature reserve. Not a lot of people know that, actually. We've got a lovely nature reserve on site here, which is supported by the Wildlife Trust. And we also have the serviced offices as well that we run here.
So is the business appealing to the corporate sector? Is it appealing to the family sector? Because both are welcome, but presumably not both make the same amount of revenue for the business.
Well, that's true. We have two big business venues, and they're obviously aimed at the corporate sector, as is the serviced offices. But the hotel really is much more aimed at our consumer audience and couples and ladies that want to spa and or play golf. And in fact, the team building, the water sports centre caters for both as well. So we do big team building experiences down on the lake for corporates, but they also have an aqua park down there where you can go and frolic around on the lake with the kids. So
talk about the geography of where you are. Cambridge is a stone's throw away. Mm-hmm. Milton Keynes, relatively speaking, is a stone's throw away as well. There's a lot of talk going on about the new ARC programme that's going to be linking Oxfordshire, Cambridgeshire, those two particular university cities, plus everything that goes in between. Is that something that you are planning for in terms of investment, or is it something that you will perhaps benefit from simply because you're here already?
Yeah, I think the latter. We will benefit from it because we are here already, and it will just bring us closer really to our clients and make us a more desirable location. We invest in our businesses all the time, and you know this venue that we're in has just had a £1 million investment this year. Despite everything, we actually had started the investment in this building back in January of this year. So that ARC, that accessibility is just going to allow us to be closer to those customers.
I don't know too many businesses that publish a gender pay gap report. Mm-hmm. You do. Your second is up there at the moment. I think it was 2018. Is that a conscious decision on your behalf to say, look, we've got nothing to hide. let's leave it open for people to read and judge accordingly.
Absolutely. We publish the gender pay gap in April every year. It goes onto the website. It's released to the media as well. We're quite proud of the gender pay gap report because we are quite a diverse business and we focus on equality as well. Being hospitality, we have some quirks in terms of age and gender as well, in the fact that we can employ some quite young people, and we employ quite highly in the female area as well, which is great, but it's about equality, not about one weighted to the other. So we are quite focused on that.
And you talk about employing younger people. As time goes on, those younger people may well be operating businesses in their own right. You have to respond to the needs of business. The people who run businesses are getting ever younger. We move in that kind of a market right now. You've got some interesting detail up on the website talking about your attitude towards future clientele. You're actively looking at what Generation Z, Generation Y, how they run their business, and therefore how the business of Wyboston Lakes has to react to that too. You're kind of trying to future-proof the business.
Absolutely. That's absolutely what we're doing. We did a lot of research work on Generation Y, Generation Z, on how they learn and how they want to learn and how they will learn going forward. And it's quite different from my generation, your generation, how we used to learn in front of a blackboard or in a classroom with books and being talked at with a PowerPoint slide that was on an OHP. And, you know, you remember the acetates.
How are you going back?
Yeah, I know, sorry, I'm showing my age. But that is how we learned. And bizarrely enough, we picked it up. We were like sponges and we gained knowledge. That's not how Generation Y and Generation Z do things anymore. With the advent of technology, with social media, with the different platforms that they use, they learn and they soak things up very differently. They're a much more creative generation than possibly we've seen in some time. They bounce off each other. They socialise much more differently to how we used to do that. And they want different things. They want colour, they want humour. When they eat, they don't want to eat off a beige looking buffet. They want to eat, you know, nice, tasty, funky food that, you know, might have been street food or something different. And they've got different dietary requirements as well.
Are you trying to give them a Google experience by being here in that case? Because they will also learn from sharing time together, be that flying hovercraft, getting out onto the lake on a jet ski, driving a quad bike, those kinds of things where the experiential side of working together then translate into their businesses when they get back to work.
Absolutely. And even within proper academic training, if you go down to the corridor to the training rooms here, you've got one training room after the other. But on the walls of those corridors, you've got great inspirational quotes, you've got real humour, and you've got huge colouring in walls with felt tip pens and colours and all sorts, where the guys will come out of their training room and they'll pick up the colouring in pens and they'll stand there for half an hour talking to each other and colouring in. And it's not just about going on the lake or getting a hovercraft. It's about the experience when they are actually learning. And these little pockets of social spaces are really, really important.
How far does work hard, play hard become part of the ethos of Wyboston Lakes?
Yes, absolutely. And this year, it's been a lot of working hard and not a lot of playing hard. But yeah, it is absolutely like that. We are one big team that pull hard when we need to and play hard when we need to.
As and when lockdown is lifted, as and when Brexit goes through, it looks as though you're very well placed to capitalise on those spaces, on those experiences, and on those relationships as well.
Yeah, we feel that way, and we certainly hope that that's the case. We've worked hard to ensure that can happen, and we really hope our clients feel that way as well.
Sounds like the family's in good shape.
Yeah, definitely.
That's Louisa Watson from Wyboston Lakes Resort. Have a look at the excellent wybostonlakes.co.uk website for all the latest booking and facilities information. Does your business need to be seen, be heard, or be found? Now, more than ever, companies need to make it clear that they are open for business. All Things Management is a team of creatives who connect their clients to their audience. To find out more, visit allthingsmanagement.co.uk. Be seen, be heard, be found. December this year is going to be unlike any other that the world has seen, and in a variety of different ways here in Great Britain. We continue to wrestle with coronavirus, but with high hopes for vaccine introduction against COVID-19. Global trade and commerce is reeling, and for Britain, a new dawn outside the EU with Brexit, deal or no deal, is now finally in sight. In the first edition of All Things Business, the podcast, I spoke to SEMLEP, and I've been doing so again, this time with Growth Hub manager Vicky Hlomuka. So with 2021 just a couple of weeks away now, is there still time to make preparations for what will be very different ways to do business? Vicky says yes, and also knows where, if you haven't already done so, you should now be looking to get up to speed.
A good place to start is to go on the government website, on the transition pages. There is a checklist on there. And actually what it does is it takes you through the specific circumstances and it's tailored to your specific needs. And the sorts of things that it will get you to consider are things like, do you travel to the EU for business? Does your business employ EU nationals? One that people often don't think about is, do you exchange personal data with organisations in the EU? And that includes where you might have websites or services that are hosted by the EU. Have you got any considerations around intellectual property protection? Copyright, trademarks, that type of thing that you might need to consider. The big one that people often think about is, do you import or export goods, but not just goods, do you, services as well? And it also looks at the impacts for sectors. So, if you're a food manufacturer, what the impacts in terms of food labelling, it could be CE marks, that type of thing. It shouldn't take you more than 30 minutes to complete. And what it will do is give you a list of recommended actions, ordering them with the most urgent at the top. Now, I recognise that can feel overwhelming, and therefore, as a Growth Hub and as SEMLEP, we have a team of trained business advisors who can really help people understand the impacts for them. And we also run a programme of webinars to look at some of those areas related to import and export. But, my top thing would be to at least take that couple of hours to really understand what the impacts are for your business.
Let me ask you a question which you may or may not want to answer. Do you perceive that we're going to end up with a no-deal Brexit, or is this very 11th hour series of negotiations just going to come to nothing? What's your sense?
It is a very difficult question to answer, and I suppose the other side of it is whether we are talking about, two continuums, a deal or a no deal. I think it's probably more around sort of the favourability of what we end up with. It does, it does feel like time is running out. And, I think from our point of view, all we can do is really prepare businesses for every scenario so that they are as prepared as possible. So if we do end up in that situation that seems more akin to a no deal, they've got everything in place that they possibly can do to deal with that.
All right, let's leave Brexit to one side. How has SEMLEP's Growth Hub been helping businesses deal with COVID-19? We've now had 2 lockdowns. We hope that we're about to see the end of lockdown 2, but we might not be seeing the end of lockdown. How have you been helping through the Growth Hub?
So I think initially a lot of the support focused on things like helping businesses navigate the financial support measures available through government, putting on webinars to not only understand some of the grants and the loans available, but also look at things like, working remotely, selling remotely, leading a team remotely, and all the different things that businesses have had to consider, working within the constraints of the pandemic. And so a lot of our work is really focused on helping businesses build resilience, whether that be sort of financial resilience, supply chain resilience. But as I mentioned, financial support's obviously been a very important part of what's been available. And we had launched a grant scheme back in September, providing grants of up to £3,000 for minor equipment and consultancy to help businesses to diversify and recover. And we're launching another capital grant scheme in December. And I think finally, we've really seen the value of businesses, of peer-to-peer support, businesses coming together to sort of solve challenges together, sort of share concerns. And so we're also, as we look towards the start of 2021, launching a peer network program to really help businesses to focus on recovery together.
What is business saying in terms of what is still needed from government, be that from the likes of Rishi Sunak or elsewhere?
Yeah, so we've been tracking very closely both the local and the national picture, and looking at what those economic impacts are for the SEMLEP region, and we've got lots of data that our analysts have put together, which is available on our website. But based on that evidence, I think we expect that the impact on GVA, on employment in the local area, it seems to be following a similar trajectory to the national picture. However, we recognise that there are significant variations by place and sector. So, some parts of our area are, we expect will fare sort of worse than others. And, clearly there are sectors, we look at the sort of impacts around the airports, clearly the sort of visitor and hospitality sector. But, there are some positive signs. One of the things we track on a weekly basis is job postings as a kind of indication of what we might see. And, in the last few weeks, sort of pre the sort of latest lockdown, we have started to see job postings and job vacancies sort of recover to pre-lockdown levels, which is a positive thing. In terms of what's needed from government, I think businesses really need the time to prepare for what comes next. So, I think our ask would be that we see clarity on what comes after that, well in advance of that deadline. And as we've already discussed, clarity on our EU exit position. It's almost regardless of outcome, whether it's that nearer to no deal or a favourable deal. They just want clarity so that they can kind of get on with preparing. And I guess for us as an organisation, our kind of ask would be clarity on the sort of longer term funding landscape so that we kind of know what resources are available to help to rebuild the local economy.
There will be those who say 2021 is going to be so difficult. There will also be those who say 2021 is a massive opportunity. How far do you subscribe to that latter view?
I'm probably an optimist myself, so I would absolutely subscribe to it, in that I think that, it's been a very challenging year for everyone. And, clearly there is lots of uncertainty still out there. However, I think our business community have proven this year that they have shown incredible resilience and innovation in the face of the crisis, in the way that they've diversified, where their market's been sort of flawed, and they've diversified to new products and services. And therefore, I'd say that, we've got those ingredients to sort of encourage our businesses to say, take advantage of the opportunities that 21 presents. Actually, as we think towards 2021, there are opportunities as we move further towards digital, as we perhaps see more investment in innovation. We work with a wide range of business support partners, from universities, the chambers, our local authorities, and talking to some of our investors and finance colleagues. There is funding out there. But my advice to businesses would be get that support and guidance to identify what the right opportunities are for you as we head into 2021.
Vicky Hlomuka there, recommending the investment of a little time getting up to speed for the arrival of 2021. Have a look at semlep.com for details of support structures and that growth hub too. My last guest on this episode of All Things Business, the podcast, and of 2020, certainly knows what it means to be at the top of his game. Steve Thompson was a key member of the England squad which lifted the William Webb Ellis Trophy in the Rugby World Cup of 2003. The entire squad, from players on the field to coaches and management off it, rightly became national heroes, with honours and the rewards which came from sheer hard work and dedication. Some went on to media work, which kept them in the public eye. Others found that hard work still lay ahead of them, ultimately outside the sport. Steve Thompson has followed the latter path. He had to, after injury in the sport that he'd become a professional in left him with a potentially life-threatening situation. After hanging up his boots, he's now embarking on a new stage in his working life. Steve's been coached by some of the best in the sport, Clive Woodward and Ian McGeechan to name but two. I wanted to know Steve's view of the importance of good management in team play, but I was a bit surprised to hear what he had to say.
To be honest, it wasn't sort of those two. Clive never really spoke to me much, to be honest. He had nothing to do with me. It was more Andy Robinson. Andy Robinson in the England setup was brilliant for me. He knew I was a bit of a, how do I say it, a bit rough around the edges. So he was the one that really mentored me in the England squad as such. But at the Saints, John Steele, when he came in, so we had Geach, who was an unbelievable coach. Whereas then John Steele came in the year we won the European Cup, and he was tough on me and he understood me. Having those big coaches are brilliant technically, but it was just the actual people off the field as well that actually sort of sculpted me into the way that I needed to be.
Steve, you are now a businessman in your own right, and you're a brewer.
Yep. So we just set up a good brewery down south. Our facility is going to be completely open, hopefully in March with everything's going on. But we have started brewing beer out of a smaller brewery at the moment. We've had the first bottles and cans filled last week. I've done quite a considerable bit of tasting, so I'm happy with them.
Are you telling me the Thompson beer belly is back by any chance?
No, I'm the opposite now. I've got one of those Pelotons. So I have been up to 145, 150 kilos in the past, but no more. I'm keeping myself fit now, so I'm doing a lot of fitness, but then a little bit of tasting. So for me, that's exciting. We've got this great building that's part of the Navy down south. Where the brewery is going to be, and then also the actual brewery itself is the Powder Monkey that we're part of.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the side of that, it's going to be Hlomuka, which is the first sort of beer that we're releasing. So it's good times in a serious bad time. I don't want to sound ungrateful because there's a lot of bad going on at the moment. For me, even a few weeks ago when we had the first lockdown, I was working on the tools. I was out doing the water pipes, bursting the main water pipes, 50 pipes, whacking lead into them, digging down and doing stuff like that so I could work and keep myself mobile. So, I know what it's like to work, and I love working. That's what the rugby, enabled me to learn, really, was keep focused, get a goal and go for it. And
surely you're going to be stocked at Franklin's Gardens. There's going to be plenty of the Thompson face and the Hlomuka brand when people finally get back into the stadiums.
I'm up there in the beginning of December for the England match. Hopefully, if we do come out of lockdown and they let us do it, which I'm really looking forward to. It's going to be quite emotional. I've only been back to the Saints once before, and I think in about 20 years, really. And it was such a massive part of my life. It did save me. I was someone that could have gone the wrong way, and it was like a family to me. So to leave that was sort of quite emotional, really. But going back there, I'm looking forward to it, seeing some old faces that hopefully have aged worse than I have, so I don't look the worst.
Don't worry about the cauliflower ears. You're going to get a very good welcome back. I've got
the saggy face. All my eyes have gone saggy and stuff. It's terrible.
Oh, listen, they got plastic surgeons for that. You got nothing to worry about. Steve, you are now a businessman. Would you do anything differently if you were an up-and-coming colt all over again? I mean, there may well be people who've got youngsters who may be part of the ONs. They may be eyeing something to do with the Saints. They may just be looking at improving their rugby game. Would you do anything differently now?
In a way, I wish I hadn't gone professional, to be honest. I would have preferred to been the old school when I first got involved and get a job, play it because you love the sport, not because it's a game, and do it like that, really. But it is what it is. There's only going to be a small number that actually make it to the top. But when it went professional, I sort of got told, you either go professional now or you don't. And I was doing an apprenticeship for Chippy, and I had to give that up for the rugby. Whereas now I really wish I'd have had that real skill set or a proper trade as such, because rugby, you can be finished in a heartbeat, like I've found out. With a second injury, I went to Wasps looking to sort of get my second life after rugby in the city and things like that, and look at connections down there, and it didn't work out. I was only there for a week and got injured up straight away. So for me, if you're a young lad coming through, the big thing is just get yourself a trade. Get yourself where the rugby could stop easily overnight, and then you could just get back into normal life.
Feet firmly on the ground. Steve, I want to finish with one final question, which is topical. England are the Six Nations champions after the longest competition in the tournament's history. Boy, did we have to wait to get the final result on that. Now they're straight into the Autumn Nations campaign. Would you want to be in their boots right now? Because that must be absolutely grueling. And where do you see England ending up?
For me, France were the team in the Six Nations. England, sort of, it was one of them. We sort of crawled over the line, which was good. Don't get me wrong; it's awesome for England to win a Six Nations. But as someone like France, England must be thinking, right, they're the ones that we've really got to go for now, and look to, especially with the World Cup being there next time. So England just got to try some new players as well, which they're starting to do. They need a bit more strength and depth. Obviously not the back row, obviously, because they're just it's unbelievable how many back rows they've got. Hookers as well. It's good. George is there, but Dunn's coming through. Cowan Dickey, So for the first time in a few years, they've actually got some great hookers there. So they've got strength of depth, but in other positions they haven't. And for me, like fly half and that for me is a little bit worrying. So if you look at that key position, that's where we lost it. I think in the World Cup as well. As much as everyone says it sounds bad, I've always said, we are weak there. Farrell is world class if you play him at fly half, but they keep swapping him and stuff. So you've got to build a squad around that and have someone else that can fit into there if he does get injured or suspended, which might happen with him.
Steve, always a pleasure to talk to you. We'll look forward to seeing you back here in Northamptonshire before very much longer. Meantime, hop and hooker, we'll look forward to blowing the froth off the top of one before very much longer. All the very best for the brewery and keep in touch, won't you?
Cheers, mate. I will do. Thanks very much. Thank you.
That's Steve Thompson, looking forwards towards 2021. Somehow I feel a hop and hooker taste test is called for shortly. That's it for this edition of All Things Business, the podcast, the last one of 2020. And many thanks to my guests, Dan Harding and Chris Burton of Sign In App, Louisa Watson from Wyboston Lakes Resort, Vicky Hlomuka from SEMLEP's Growth Hub, and sporting star Steve Thompson. I'll be back in January, but until then, enjoy whatever the festive season brings you and your family. Stay safe, and here's to 2021, a year which will certainly bring new challenges and hopefully new opportunities. From everybody on the All Things Business, the podcast team, thanks for listening.